We are live.
Okay, everyone, we are live on YouTube, and if everyone's ready, I'm trying to see. I'm just going to give another minute and see if we can get everyone on board.
I'm here, Dan. It's Jim.
Okay, and
And in for Councilman Susie.
I think just Councilman Susie, yes. All right, are you all set, Madam Clerk?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of the Woonsocket City Council to order for Monday, August 17th, 2020. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Bryan,
Here.
Councilman Canoia,
Here.
Councilman Kithis,
Here.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Here.
Councilman Susie, Councilman Ward,
Here.
President Gendron.
Here, we do have a quorum. If, Madam Clerk, if you could please lead us in the prayer and the pledge.
And Susie's here.
Councilman Susie.
Here.
God our Father, we ask that you send your blessing upon this city and upon this council. Guide us in our efforts, increase our motivation, and strengthen our resolve to build a better community and ensure a brighter future for the city of Woonsocket. This we ask in your name. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First item, or the next item on our agenda is the agenda for Board of License Commissioners.
20 LC 18, application of licenses and renewal of licenses.
Motion to
Council,
approve.
Council Vice President Bryan.
Council President, I make a motion, we approve street vendor, quarterly entertainment license, private detective license, and street vendor renewal.
Motion made by Council Vice President Bryan,
Second, Sierra.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Comments on the agenda? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Bryan,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20 LC 18 is approved, 7-0. Approval and correction of the minutes from the meeting held July 13th.
Council President,
Council Vice President Bryan.
there are no additions, corrections, or deletions. I move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
Motion made by Council Vice President Bryan, seconded by Councilman Ward. Any changes or corrections? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Bryan,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and the minutes from the July 13th meeting are approved as presented, 7-0. Consent agenda.
Council President, I make a
Councilman-
motion. I make a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of 20 CO 35 and 20 CO 36, both of those relating to the Elm Street project for the comprehensive plan and zoning. Keep those separate.
Very good. Motion made by Councilman Canoia,
Second, Ward.
seconded by Councilman Ward to approve the consent agenda as submitted with the exception of 20 CO 35 and 36. Any comments or any other items to be taken up separately? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Bryan,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and the consent agenda is approved as submitted with the exception of 20 CO 35 and 36. On 20 CO 35 and 36, comments?
Motion
I
to
have
accept.
one comment. All right, motion made by Councilman Canoia,
Okay.
seconded by
Second,
Councilman
Ward.
Susie. I do have one comment regarding those, and that is, these are for the amendments that we were going to make to the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, and which requires a public hearing. So Director Gibbs, if now that the council has gotten this communication with the planning board's recommendation, if you could work to get the public hearing scheduled. I think the best time is if we could do a 6:30 just before our September 14th meeting. And then we should have time, I believe, to, for the appropriate advertising. I believe it's 3 weeks of advertising. But if you could work with the details on that, Director Gibbs, and get it before us so that the council can act on the planning board's recommendation.
I will do that, sir.
Thank you very much, Director. Any other comments regarding 20 CO 35 and 36? Hearing none, we'll move on to communications and petitions.
20 CP 10, request of Councilman Ward to address the following. Continuing employment of Paul Luber and associated costs, including discussion of communications received related thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I began my inquiry back on July 22nd, relatively shortly after the mayor had informed us and people had been asking about Mr. Luba's continuing employment with the city. I asked of both the city administration and the State Department of Revenue to explain how Mr. Luba could still be in our employ when in fact his service as a financial advisor expired formally on March the 20th, according to the 5-year provision in state law. And ultimately, I received a series of documents that included invoices from the city to the state and a variety of email communications among various parties, starting with emails as far back as April. Actually, some of them as far back as March. And what I discovered was that, in fact, the State Department of Revenue acknowledged and sent a letter related to the conclusion of Mr. Luba's service through March the 20th. And there was a request made apparently sometime there about that time from the administration that Mr. Luba's funding be continued. And the response to that, in one instance, came from Mr. Fricolo, the director of the Department of Revenue, I believe was his position. Acknowledges in responding to the mayor that that Mr. Luba's term had ended on March 20th. And as he indicated, although the period has ended, the city is free to negotiate on its own terms an independent employment agreement to provide for continuation of services. However, the cost of continuation would be the sole responsibility of the city. And that was as of April the 20th. Following that, sometime in early May, there was a series of communications related to invoicing and the fact that the administration had prepared an invoice that went all the way through May the 2nd, but did not indicate any costs from the state and included $13,175.63 of city costs associated with Mr. Luba's service to the city. I think the intent in these communications with the State Department of Revenue was to try to get some arrangement made with the state to obtain a reimbursement plan from the state. And as it turns out, around that same time, there was a conversation between Mr. Coleman and a Mr. Kadega of the Department of Administration related to the possibility of using CARES Act funding to help Woonsocket with the application process and obtain some funding through the CARES Act funding. And CARES Act, for those who may not know, is that $1.25 billion worth of funds, none of which, other than through education funding, has been distributed to any city or town, to my knowledge, at this point. But further to that, there came an email from Brett Smiley, who is with the governor's, is the director of the Department of Administration. And on May the 9th, he had sent an email to Mr. Furcolo saying, as you know, we have committed to keep Paul Luber for 1 more year. Could you please ask Steve Coleman to work with Joe Cadega to write this up in such a way that can use CARES Act funding? And to all in this email exchange, he mentions that Paul Luber is a budget finance aid being paid 3 ways through the state, East Providence, and Woonsocket. He lives on the Woonsocket payroll, and they get reimbursed for 2/3 by the state and East Providence. This commitment was to end on June 30th, 20, so we could do a new 1-year thing if we need to. Our commitment is to 6/30 of 21. This was a holdover from these towns being under a budget commission. Given the extreme fiscal strain our cities and towns will be under due to COVID, and given the unique situation of these 2 towns as perhaps the hardest hit other than Central Falls, we should provide Paul as a way to help them. Part of his responsibilities is helping them with their FEMA reimbursements and other direct response work. I can discuss more over the phone if necessary. Now, this was on May the 9th. On May the 11th, the question arose as to whether or not, from the Department of Revenue, the question arose as to whether or not Mr. Luba, in an attempt to fund, as according to Mr. Smiley's instructions, was included in the fiscal 21 budget. And the ultimate response coming from the finance director was that Mr. Luba was not included in the fiscal 21 budget. Following that, there was an exchange among Mr. Furcolo, Mr. Cadega, and Jeremy Leach of the Department of Administration. I see a repeat of the Smiley email. And so Mr. Furcolo writes back to Mr. Smiley, to be clear, the state was funding 50% of his salary for the amount of time Paul spent working on Woonsocket-related issues. The city was paying another 50%. Did we commit 50% funding for the next fiscal year and Woonsocket picking up the other 50%? Or did the governor commit to 100% of this cost? And Mr. Smiley's response was, we only committed to paying our share, but the mayor said EP was paying 1/3. If EP is out, it's 50-50. And that was, as I said, was on May the 12th. That was then followed on the same day, where some staff from Woonsocket sent emails in through to Mr. Coleman and a Jane Cole of the Department of Revenue. And they responded in a conversation between them that if he is done on June 30th and we are acknowledging that the state stops paying on 3/19, why would we be going down the path of funding them further? And Mr. Coleman points out, because a deal was made by the governor's office to fund him. I made the assumption that the mayor wanted him into fiscal 21, but from this, it does not seem that way, unless Cindy does not know, but her thoughts would line up with Paul not being budgeted in fiscal 21. I'm gathering from that exchange that they were expecting to reimburse based upon him being budgeted, but apparently, and we know he was not. And so that's basically where it all ends up, on or around May 12th. And then Ms. Johnston from the city of Woonsocket sent an email to Mr. Coleman indicating that the invoice apparently from the period of March 19th to May the 20th was still unpaid. And that's pretty much where it leaves it. And the reason I go through all of that is to point out that I see nothing that would be supportive of the mayor's assertion that Mr. Luba's service to us will be at no cost. I see where there's a scenario where it may be partially funded, like most expenses legitimately would be under the FEMA reimbursement at 75%. I see where there's an indication that there's a willingness of the state to pay a share based on a continuation of the plan that was used for the Budget Commission funding. However, that seems to have been contingent on him being in the budget, which he was not. So I don't, and then I should finish this part of this by saying, and then I asked for a copy of all of the financial records for billings and collections related to Mr. Luba's service and received all of that. But in that same request to the city, I asked for all communications related to Mr. Luba's continuing service. And despite all of the emails I received from the state of Rhode Island, I received no such communications, either in writing or in emails, exchanges through any office of the administration. So in fact, my request for information of the administration was not a complete response. It was lacking in any communications, either by email or otherwise. And so I guess, it really comes down to the question of how is Mr. Luba being funded? Is he truly free? And I will follow this up tomorrow with a request to the administration to explain what documented agreements we may have with the state that would indicate that there is a commitment by the state to fund his position through CARES funding, or how it will be broken down between FEMA reimbursement or any other state agreement that I was not made privy to through all of the communications that were provided to us. And I'll leave that there. The second item I have is the
Excuse me, Council President, Council President. Council President,
Mayor?
yes,
Hi.
so after hearing all of the exchange from Councilman Ward, I guess the simple question could have just been, is Mr. Luba, which I was already asked that question by Councilwoman Sierra early on and gave her an answer, and it's the same answer. Mr. Luba is working with us in the city of Woonsocket, and he is here until June 30th of 2021. And I will reiterate what I said earlier, and that is that he is here, and the state has assured me that it is at no cost to the city of Woonsocket. They do understand that there is a lot of strain that's been put on municipalities and additional strain on Woonsocket with the shortage of staff and the added detail of work with COVID-19. And they were kind enough to allow us to be able to utilize his talents and service. And he does do work for East Providence at this point in time. And the rest of his time is here in the city of Woonsocket. So Councilman Ward, I hope that answers your question. Whatever paperwork you have is all fine and good. Quite frankly, it's a question that I could have just simply answered and saved you a whole lot of time. I answered Councilwoman Sierra when she asked, and I believe you received that same answer. So I will again state what I stated before. And you didn't receive any communication because there is none to give you. You received everything you asked for, and Mr. Luba is here working with us, and I'm very appreciative of that fact. And I think that the work you learned of what he did just in our last work session and the detail to what he brought to the table was very helpful to us. I appreciate his time, and I appreciate the state for allowing us to have his services through this fiscal year.
Council President. if I
Councilman
may-
Ward, you
I may
still have
simply-
time.
Simply follow up with that. The simple fact is, yes, the mayor did say, and actually it's what prompted me to ask the question. The mayor simply said that Mr. Luba will be provided to us free. And I've often discovered that free is not usually free. But my point was in asking this was specific to obtain documentation to say how it is that he's free. I understand how we had an arrangement with East Providence. We had an arrangement with the state under their responsibility with the Budget Commission arrangement that's in the state law. What I did not get in all of those emails was anything other than an indication that he would be used for FEMA's application processing, which is good, and you'll get 75% reimbursement there. But that still leaves 25% of the cost. And there is a split with East Providence, and whatever they use, and we have the rest, but there is a rest. And then and I guess my point was, and it was hinted at in one of those emails, that somehow there's been a verbal commitment to pay whatever balance is, and that somehow the city would be provided assistance in fulfilling or filling out a CARES application to access the funds that no other community in the state has been provided, assured, or any arrangement or agreement made by the state to give reimbursement for expenses to any other community. And I was looking for the document that simply assured the city that we were going to get whatever that balance was. And so it was not to be had. Apparently it doesn't exist. And so everything that has been provided in assurance to the city has been done verbally. And I guess that's the conclusion I have to be left with, is that this was a communication done by phone from somebody in the governor's office or the Department of Revenue to assure us of something financially. And that's great, but I'm not accustomed to doing business with verbal agreements in government. Usually you have to do formal applications and provide documentation and get assurances in the form of a letter when you're going to receive benefit of some grant money. That's not happening here. And that's,
I didn't, so before you go down the grant money path, I did not indicate that it's grant money. Paul Luba is an employee of the state of Rhode Island, and they are loaning him to us. How they pay him is their business, whether they're doing it through grant money or not. All I'm telling you is that he is helping the city of Woonsocket, and you know, you might be skeptical of you know, people and you know, maybe you're not trustworthy of them. I don't know that, but I can tell you he is an employee of the state of Rhode Island, and they are allowing him to aid the city of Woonsocket, which I am very appreciative for. And if you have any further questions, it's probably best if you speak with his employer, which is the state of Rhode Island.
Mayor, I am so happy to hear that, because nothing in any communication thus far had indicated he had changed from being a city employee to a state employee. And that, if that's the case, starting July 1st and he was a state employee, that's wonderful. That completely answers the question. Unfortunately, nobody provided that answer in any of the communications I received, but I'm glad you have provided that answer, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to not having to pay him. And Mr. Luba, thank you for the work you do for the city of Woonsocket. I'll leave it at that. That you just changed the whole dynamic of the question, and I appreciate it, Mayor. So,
Council President,
Councilman Canoyer, Councilman Ward, are you okay?
can I just ask one
This will be a
clarifying
time to
question?
come-
Councilman Ward?
by all means.
Councilman Canoyer?
I just want to be really clear on this. That Mr. Luba, and it's got nothing to do whether or not Mr. Luba is doing good work or not. It has nothing to do with trusting anybody, but just want to understand the facts. Are we to understand at this point that Mr. Luba is not being paid in any way, shape, or form by the city of Woonsocket?
I
Not
did
if
not
he's a
say,
state employee.
excuse me, I did not indicate, I don't have one answer, and I don't know if the finance director is on, but if the city is issuing any pay to Mr. Luba, it's reimbursed by the state of Rhode Island. The bottom line is this: his services to help the city of Woonsocket will not, and we had this conversation, Councilman Canoyer, will not be of any cost to the city of Woonsocket. That was an assurance that I was given when they indicated that they would allow him to aid the city in this fiscal year. Now, what arrangement they made through finance, as far as whether or not he is paid through the city and then reimbursed by the state, I don't have that answer. And maybe the director does, but at the end of the day, there is no cost in fiscal year 21 for the services of Paul Luba.
So if I just finish that one comment and then I'll shut up. Here's the problem. We all lived through 2008 and 9 when the state, in the middle of the fiscal year, cut our state aid. And I'm not saying there's any ill will on anybody's part, but it sounds like Mr. Luba remains an employee of the city of Woonsocket, and he continues to be paid out of the city of Woonsocket's payroll. And there is an expectation that will somehow get reimbursed and be made whole by the state of Rhode Island, which is fine. But what I think is crystal clear is that based on Councilman Ward's inquiry to the state, there's clearly disagreement and or at best confusion at the state level as to what's going on and how this is being handled, number one. And number two, we clearly don't have a written set of terms of employment for Mr. Luba and the state concurring. There should be something in writing that says, okay, we will continue to employ, I don't care if it's the city or the state, but we will continue to employ Mr. Luba under these conditions, this pay, et cetera, and here's how it's gonna work. And right now, I think it's fair to say that that does not exist. So it's not unreasonable to at least ask about that, because we have seen instances where the road to hell was paved with good intentions. And then we find out at the end of the day, things don't always happen as we agreed verbally. So I'll leave it at that.
Councilman Ward, it's still your time.
Thank you, Council President. My second item is simply that the cost of legal fees associated with the defense of property valuation appeals and other legal services, and the specific through valuation appeals, that will be discussed further into our agenda when we talk about the resolution to award a contract for revaluation services. But the fact is, in fiscal year 20, according to the report provided for legal services, the budget for property valuation defense was $35,000. We spent $114,203.65, almost $80,000 more than was in the budget. And I think any of us who have dealt with any of the issues or seen any of the issues associated with how the valuations were done and heard the late Albert Brian talking to us about the deficiencies in the process that was done by the firm that did our last revaluation, can understand why this cost would be so high, and I would expect it'll be high again this year. I just think it's tragic that we have to spend this much money defending something, and I think to a certain extent, many people feel was so poorly done. The rest of that budget was not in bad order in terms of our labor costs and other matters and litigation support. In fact, among the other three, we're actually $30,000 below budget, but that's offset by the $79,000 we're over budget on the other item for property valuations. And I'll expand further on this when we get to the section on the revaluation contract award. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Ward.
20 CP11, request of President Gendron to address the following. Discussion regarding future city council meetings being held in city council chambers in Harris Hall.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This will be brief. I put this on the agenda tonight because I had anticipated tonight's meeting, the August 17th meeting, to be somewhat live, a hybrid type meeting, live in the city council chambers in Harris Hall. That did not work out completely as I had planned. What I anticipated was that the 7 councilors, the city clerk, the city solicitor, Mr. Paul Jacob, who would be recording and streaming and broadcasting live, and then the administration would be live in the city council chambers in Harris Hall and would allow for the safe social distancing and still keep it under the limit of 15 people in one gathering. And that would have been a reasonable compromise hybrid type system where the people who want to see these council meetings brought back live would have had that opportunity to at least see our interaction being live. And it's, I feel, somewhat more effective if we're meeting live. That didn't happen. So I put it on the agenda tonight because I just want to make clear that I anticipate that the September 14th meeting will be held in the city council chambers in Harris Hall. And I hope that the coordination that needs to take place will take place. Now, we understand we're in the middle of a pandemic. Things can happen. And I'm not completely unrealistic, but there is no reason that with the situation we're in today, and I can only speak for where we are today, that we could have met in the city council chambers in Harris Hall, been safely social distanced and still maintained under the 15 people to be in one gathering. So I hope that my colleagues agree with me. And many of the people who will be at that meeting are already people who enter City Hall on a daily basis, the city clerk, the city solicitor, the administration, the Director D'Agostino and Director Gino Gillette and all of these people that would normally attend, Director of Human Services. They all attend our meetings, and I envision them. They're people who already enter City Hall on a daily basis anyways. So I think this is a reasonable expectation. And if like you, if like me, you've been receiving as many inquiries, phone calls, Facebook messages and text and whatnot, saying when are the council meetings going to be live again? This is my anticipation. This is my expectation that we will be live again in the city council chambers in Harris Hall for the September 14th meeting. Again, that remains to be seen if something happens, but with the situation we're in today, that is my feeling, that is my belief, that is my desire, and that is what I expect. And Madam Clerk, that is all I have in regards to that topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President,
Councilman Canoia.
if I may, I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4246-6B, a discussion of ordinance 20019 related to the required reporting from the Redevelopment Agency of Woonsocket. To make that motion?
Yeah, and I will second that, Councilman Canoia. Roll call, Madam Clerk, to add the item to the agenda.
Councilman Bream,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kifis,
No.
Councilwoman Sierra,
yes,
Councilman Susie,
unmute.
Sorry, no.
President Gendron.
Yes, and we will add the item to the agenda for discussion purposes, 5-2.
For the record, Councilman Ward is a yes.
Oh, sorry, Councilman Ward.
Thank you, Councilman Ward.
Thank you to those that accommodated my request. And I'll be brief. Ordinance 20019 is an ordinance, not a resolution, but an ordinance that was passed by the city council unanimously back in mid-May. And it requires, pursuant to requirements of Rhode Island state law, but it required reporting from the redevelopment agency in terms of several things to begin no later than June 15th. And we'd asked for, in part, a detailed summary of all transactions and activities that were contemplated over the past 6 months, a forecast of projected activities, a complete inventory of all the properties owned or controlled by the redevelopment agency, as well as to provide us on a monthly basis their financial position and financial assets, et cetera. Not a lot of heavy lifting, but something that we really need to do. And we've had discussions about the redevelopment agency and how it's a tool. It's an exciting tool to use. And there was some concern when we made some changes to one of the programs we had. And when we discussed those changes, one of the issues was about transparency and having visibility by the city council, et cetera. So now, today's August 17th, we're 3 months past when this ordinance was approved unanimously. and we've seen nothing. So I guess my question would be, my discussion point would be, I would respectfully request Director Gibbs to please adhere to the ordinance that was duly passed and provide the necessary and required reporting in the next several weeks, if you don't mind.
Also,
That's all I have on that. I appreciate it.
okay. All set then?
I am. I would just like to see some results. That's all of the things we actually do here. Thank you.
And you're okay with that, Director Gibbs?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to ordinances passed for the first time, July 13th, 2020.
20040, providing a tax stabilization agreement to Rish Inc. in connection with real property located at Plat 51A, Lot 1.
Council President,
Councilman Kithis.
for the same reasons I cited last time, I'll be recusing myself from this vote.
Okay, let the record reflect that Councilman Kithis has recused himself on the Resh discussion tonight.
Council President,
Councilman
for the-
Canoia.
yeah, just for the record, could he indicate why he's recusing? He said for the same reasons. I'm not sure what those were. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Kithis.
I received a generous donation from the family whose business interest this is for my political campaign, and I believe that represents a serious ethical concern and very much want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So I'll be recusing myself.
Okay,
Thank you.
Solicitor DeSimone, if I can just, if you can unmute for a moment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just, it raises concern because I have, what is the guideline for recusing for the reason of donations to a campaign account? What's the threshold for recusing?
Well, the threshold for recusing is if you have a financial interest, which I'm not sure that he does have a financial interest in that particular, legislation before the committee.
Okay,
So just because someone gets a donation on behalf of, you might get a donation from the police union or the fire union, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to recuse yourself from any vote on their contract or anything like that. So,
okay. I just wanted to make that clear for myself. Okay,
yeah,
thank you, thank you, Solicitor.
Yeah.
That being said, if we can get a motion on 20040. Can I have a motion on 20040, please?
Motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry, hold on, Madam Clerk. Solicitor DeSimone, were you trying to signal me?
No, I'm sorry. I was just
Okay.
taking classes.
The pictures are so small, I'm just, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20040 is approved 6-0 with Councilman Kithis recusing on the vote.
20042, authorizing the purchase of a 2021 International dump truck.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20042 is approved 7-0, second passage.
20043, authorizing the mayor to enter into a 2-year lease extension with Agentwell Inc. for property known as Assessors Plat 13, Lot 104, 84 Social Street.
Motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
made by Councilman Kithis, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments? I will just say, we attended a very nice event at the senior center, and it was nice to see they do good work there. And I'm glad that the city has extended the lease agreement with Aging Well so that the good services of that agency and the benefits that are brought to the seniors of Woonsocket can continue. And I know that most of this council has been instrumental in seeing that through. So thank you for those that have unwavered in their support of the senior center. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Githis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
yes,
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
yes,
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20043 is approved, 7-0, second passage.
20044, approving and adopting the Community Development Block Grant Program budgeted for program year 2020 through 2021.
Motion to approve, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia,
second, Ward,
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
I just want to follow up with the conversation we had at the last meeting related to this, and I will be forwarding a request based upon my own analysis of the differences between the CDBG allocations to the various operating budget expenditures versus what is reflected in the operating budget. So the director can expect to receive that communication from me within the next week. And I'll look forward to seeing how those differences are reconciled between the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Githis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
yes,
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes,
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20044 is approved, second passage, 7-0. New ordinances.
20045, authorizing the purchase of 3 2020 Ford Utility Police Interceptor Cruisers.
Motion to approve, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Brian. Comments? Before we get into comments, I did receive a communication from the finance director, and she asked me to note that the incremental purchase price of each cruiser is listed in the resolution as $53,708, but the actual number should have been $51,659. The total remains the same, but the incremental price is incorrect. So if we could have a motion to
So moved.
correct the numbers, motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by the chair, seconded by Councilman Vice President Brian, to amend 20045 for the two references to 53,708, to change that to 51,659. On the amendment, do we have any any comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk, on the amendment, please.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Githis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
yes,
Councilman Susie,
Councilman Susie, you have to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Ward,
yes,
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20045 is amended, 7-0. Comments on 20045 is amended.
Council President.
Councilman Canoia.
I know this is budgeted. In fact, it's actually less than we had budgeted, which is a good thing. But do we know anybody from the administration on? that
Director
knows
Gillette is on with us.
Does anybody know whether or not we have to submit this immediately, or can we approve this? You have the approval and then take your time in submitting it until we get a clearer picture of what's going to go on with state aid and so forth. I know that, for example, I don't think we've yet issued our motor vehicle tax tax bills, as we're waiting to find out exactly what the state is going to do. And I don't want to hold up the police department, but by the same token, if things get ugly with the state in terms of state aid and our funding, this might be one of the items that we should potentially defer. So long way of saying, is this something that you can that we have to pull the trigger on and incur the cost in the near term, or can you delay it a little bit? Or do you even know at this point?
Council President, Director Gillette.
Yes,
I do
thank you,
believe
Director.
and Chief Foltz is on too, I believe, so he might be able to help me out here, and the Finance Director. But I do believe the end date for that proposal is 9/30 of 2020. So I think it's September 30th that bill, that purchase agreement would not be in effect anymore. Does that sound right, Chief Foltz?
Chief Oates, you're muted. If you can unmute for us.
Can you hear me now, Mr. President?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, that purchase, actually, we had gone ahead and put the POs in and then realized there was a mistake in the fact that it was over, the finance director was out. There was a mistake in the fact that it obviously totaled over the $100,000, which was required by the council, even though it was already approved through the council in the regular budget. And I mean, this is something that I really would like to move forward with. One of those, what's going to happen is some of the older cars, especially the K9 car, I believe has over 100,000 miles. That car is going to get pushed out probably to a detail car, which is a good thing, and it's going to make us some money. But one of the cars, we're going to shift things around. So I understand, and I'm very appreciative of the council's support, the mayor's support on getting this new equipment. But I think it's something that that we would like to really move forward with now, if possible.
Mr. President?
Councilman Canoia, you all set?
Yeah, no, I am. I just say, first, thank you. I understand. And I would just ask that to the extent possible, operationally, you guys are the make the decision on that, obviously, but to the extent that you can operationally defer this, I know what's before us, it says validate, similar to what Director Gillette indicated, it says validate September 30th, 2020. So whatever you can do to defer it, if you can, that'd be great. But you guys have to figure out, obviously, what makes sense from an operational standpoint, and we'll respect that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Susi.
Yeah, I agree with that stuff. You know, there's a reason why we put in, you guys put in quite a bit of money in the reserves. And I think this is exactly that scenario. We did talk about that, the budget, and there were some significant cuts made in other departments, and monies were put into, while the tax rate didn't lower, they put the monies into a contingency or a reserve. So this should be that situation where if we don't get what we're expecting or hoping for, that those monies could be used. So I don't think we're putting ourselves in too precarious a situation, since that we did put a significant amount of money in reserve. That's it.
Wait a minute, Councilman Susi, you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, I know. I can imagine.
I've lived through what the state can do to the city of Woonsocket.
Yeah.
I've experienced it firsthand on the council. Councilman Ward can speak volumes to it. Don't underestimate what can happen to us.
Imagine. That's why you put money in reserve. So that was a smart move. Yeah.
We didn't put millions, believe me.
No,
I wish we had millions to put in.
$100,000, right? We're looking at.
It's 150. Well, if you look at the ordinance, it's 154,000, almost 155. But my point is, the state, as Councilman Canoia has pointed out, and as we have said repeatedly, the state could undo many things because of this pandemic or whatever other excuse they might choose to use. So, but that's fine. Any other comments regarding 20-045? No, hearing none. Roll call, Madam Clerk, on 20-045 as amended.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kiffis,
No.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susi,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20-045 is passed 6-1. First passage.
20-046, an amendment of Chapter 17 entitled Traffic of the Code of Ordinances, City of Woonsocket.
And I have a motion on 20046, please.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by
Ward.
Councilman Ward,
Second,
seconded by Council Vice President Brian. Comments?
Council President?
Councilman Canoia.
Yep, just a quick question, and I'm sure it's obvious, but I want to just confirm. This won't have any effect. I can't keep track of what's what up there, but there is a commercial operation up in that area, up off of Burnside Ave. The people that make the creams and stuff, I think. So the bottom line is, my simple question is, do any of these changes creating prohibitions around trucking, do any of these changes affect any of the commercial businesses that are up there?
Director Gillette, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'll have I'm not too sure on that as far as the is Public Works Director Agostino on?
Director D'Agostino, he's on, but he's muted.
All right, well, let me
There he is.
Director D'Agostino,
Yes.
Director Gillette was just going to ask you a question.
What's your question?
the ordinance was the building, the commercial building up there. Will that affect the commercial building? That was through Councilman Canoyer. I'm not sure if there's 18 wheelers that are going up there, and I think that was a purpose of that that ordinance. But maybe we should table it this time, and we could look into it further.
Yeah, I recommend tabling it.
Okay, before we get a tabling motion, I'd like to just say one thing. Director Gillette, if you could, it's not directly related to this, but there's been some discussion with the exact same situation in another part of the city. So if I can call you tomorrow, and I'll give you that information, because it sounds exactly the same as this. So we'll table this if we can get a motion to table.
Motion to table, Jim.
Motion made by
Second,
Councilman
Sierra.
Canoyer, seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Roll call, Madam Clerk, on the tabling.
Councilman Brand,
yes.
Councilman Canoyer,
Yes.
Councilman Kifis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
<clears throat>
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20046 is tabled 7-0.
20047, an amendment of Chapter 2 entitled Administration of the Code of Ordinances.
Motion to approve for discussion, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman
Second, Ward.
Canoyer, seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President.
Councilman Canoyer.
So if I understand this, this is to provide a deferral and interest related to, is it the motor vehicle or tangible property tax? Is that correct?
Tangible and motor vehicle.
So I guess my question is, what's behind this? What's the purpose? Why do we want to do that?
I can speak to it if, just from what we passed, the problem is, Councilman Canoyer, tangibles and motor vehicles are hard to collect. And there are some people who, if the interest was removed, they would pay their unpaid taxes in full. Otherwise, we would probably never collect any taxes. So when we went 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, or actually 5 years ago, sorry. Did the same thing, and they brought in a good amount of money for people who wanted to pay their taxes but could not afford to pay the taxes and the penalties and interest. So this was a way of collecting some money instead of collecting nothing.
Okay.
But I will,
This is Director Chamberlain. I just want to reiterate what Council President said. It gives the opportunity for people who have fallen far behind. Some people have motor vehicle taxes that are very old and their interest is almost, more than their principal. So it gives them an opportunity to catch up and get a fresh start.
Mr. President?
Director DeSimone, if I can ask you a question before you, Director, Solicitor DeSimone, if this looks like, did they just use the same template from 5 years ago?
Yes, and in fact, the enabling law is identical to the 5-year-old law too.
Okay, so where it talks about 2 tax amnesties, that's not the case.
Well, under the enabling legislation, both 5 years ago and today, they gave us the ability to have 2 tax amnesty periods, 60-day periods.
No, I
We
understand,
chose-
but in the resolution, it says 2, but then it only lists 1 date.
Right, we have the ability to do 2, but we're only doing 1 as of right now. That's what we're asking the council for, just 1 60-day period.
So I'll ask my colleagues, if you're supportive of this, my question is, should we be amending this to strike the reference to 2 separate 60-day periods and to clean this resolution up, or is it appropriate the way it is?
Yeah, Mr. President, it's appropriate the way it is. If the city wanted to add another 60-day, they'd still have to come back to the council to do the 60-day period.
Okay,
So it's still, the way it is appropriate.
okay,
It's just that 5 years ago, we did 2 60-day periods. This time, we chose to recognize that we have the ability to do 2, but we're only asking the council for 1 at this time.
okay.
So it's fine the way it is. There's no need to change it.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20047 is approved. 7-0. First passage. New resolutions.
20R74, authorizing the cancellation of certain taxes.
Motion to approve, Ward.
Motion made by Councilman Ward,
Second, Kithis.
seconded by Councilman Kithis. Comments?
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
For the public's information, this particular resolution to abate taxes is in a total amount of $24,400.19. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R74 is approved, 7-0.
20R75, authorizing the cancellation of certain taxes.
Motion to approve, Ward.
Motion made by Councilman Ward,
Second, Jim.
seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Ward.
this particular item is related to a property currently owned by Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corp. On Hope Street, and as such, it is a tax exempt property, so the abatement's in the amount of $5,527.57.
Thank you, Councilman Ward. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R75 is approved, 7-0.
20R76, authorizing the cancellation of certain taxes.
Motion approved, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second, Susie.
seconded by Councilman Susie. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Ward.
I need to go on record now as indicating that I have filed the necessary recusal form and will be recusing myself from participating on this matter because the taxpayer in question is my brother. Thank you.
It's a good reason. Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, who is that?
Yeah, Jim.
Councilman
Um,
Canoyer.
Just to take John's place, Councilman Ward's place, this, just for the public, is a $6,497 abatement for Mr. David Ward, dentist office on South Main Street. And it's in connection with the overassessment on the business.
Thank you, Councilman Canoyer. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kittis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R76 is approved, 6-0, with Councilman Ward recusing himself.
20R77, granting permission to use city property.
Motion approved, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer, seconded by the chair. Comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brand,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kittis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R78 is approved, 7-0.
No, 77.
77, I'm sorry, 77.
20R78, naming the Woonsocket Animal Shelter in honor of Albert G. Brian.
Madam Clerk,
Yes, Councilwoman?
Council-
would you please read the resolution in its entirety?
We need, Madam Clerk, Councilwoman Sierra, we need a motion and a second first. If would you like to make the motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilman Brian, Councilman John Brian, for clarification. And Madam Clerk, if you could, Councilwoman Sierra has requested that you could read the resolution.
20R78, naming the Woonsocket Animal Shelter in honor of Albert G. Brian. Whereas Albert G. Brian was an active member and contributor to the city of Woonsocket civic life, spanned over many decades, serving as the president
Madam
of the
Clerk,
Woonsocket.
Madam Clerk, let me read it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
I will be happy to read it. Whereas Albert G. Brian was an active member and contributor of the city of Woonsocket civic life, spanning over many decades, serving as president of the Woonsocket City Council, Rhode Island State Representative, Director of Finance and Administration, Director of Human Services, and as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. And whereas Albert G. Brian was a notorious lover of animals, he could frequently be found feeding any number of stray animals, birds, squirrels, and groundhogs, and even skunks at his office on Hamlet Avenue and his South Main Street home. And whereas Albert G. Brian was also well known at the Northern Rhode Island Animal Hospital for bringing in numerous stray animals which he had spayed or neutered at his own expense. And whereas Albert G. Brian was also known for driving the most recognizable car in all of Woonsocket, vintage Mercury Colony Park beach wagon. And over the years, he could be seen driving around the city with his favorite companions, Princess, Kelly, and most recently, the giant German Shepherd, which he rescued, aptly known as the Big Guy. And whereas the Woonsocket Animal Shelter has not been named after any previous honoree, and the Woonsocket City Council is desirous of naming a building and parcel of land in honor of Albert G. Brian, the son of Lodi and Obeline Brian, father of Darlene, Jennifer, and John Brian. And I will go on. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Woonsocket, Rhode Island as follows. The Woonsocket City Council shall honor the late Albert G. Brian by naming the Woonsocket Animal Shelter, currently located at 109 Cumberland Hill Road, the Albert G. Brian Memorial Animal Shelter in perpetuity. Should the Albert G. Brian Memorial Animal Shelter be relocated, the name shall follow. The administration and/or the Woonsocket City Council shall host a dedication ceremony upon installation of the signage. The city's property division shall provide notice to tenants and provide proper signage, subject to approval by the City Council, to be effectuated. This honor being to effectuate this honor being bestowed upon the late Albert G. Brian no later than October 5th, 2020. The city clerk shall forward this resolution to Darlene, Jennifer, and John Brian upon its passage. And this resolution shall take effect immediately upon passage by the City Council. Denise Sierra, City Council sponsor.
Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. That being said, are there any other comments that anyone would like to make regarding this resolution?
Council President,
Councilman Brian.
I'm extremely grateful to Councilwoman, for putting this in, and I would please ask that my name be added to this resolution. Thank you. And Albert he was an incredible lover of animals, and if you had asked him if he wanted something to be named after him, he would have definitely said no. But to have the animal shelter named after him is perfect, and I'm grateful, and I appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? I would simply like to ask Madam Clerk if you could add my name with the permission of the sponsor, if I could add my name, Councilwoman Sierra?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Council President,
Councilman Ward?
I'd ask the sponsor to allow my name to also be included on this resolution.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilman Susi?
Yeah, I would ask the same of Councilman Sierra. Fine gentleman, I think it's a perfect honor, so.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Council President,
Councilman Kithis?
I would like to ask the same of Councilwoman Sierra.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other comments?
Ditto from Jim.
Ditto.
Ditto.
And I think the resolution says enough in itself. So without any further ado, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Hell, yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R78 is proudly passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
20R79, authorizing the Public Works Director to enter into a contract with Hartford Paving Corporation, Logie Street.
Motion approved, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second, Councilman Ward.
seconded by Councilman Ward. Comments?
Council President,
Councilman Canoyer.
Director D'Agostino, if you're still on. Similar concern with respect to the comments I made about the police vehicles. And this one is a little bit of a twist. Is it possible that the funds for both this, for Logie Street, as well as the next one we have, can be earmarked out of CDBG before we use up the general fund allocation? Is that possible? Do you know?
Yeah, no, I'll answer your question. The answer is no.
Okay.
They're not in the zone. One is being funded from the general fund, the road reconstruction line item.
Yep.
And the other is being funded through the water department because it has to do with the upgrade to the water line on Logie Street.
Understood. Okay. I got it. Thank you, sir.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R79 is approved 7-0.
20R30, authorizing the Public Works Director to enter into a contract with Hartford Paving Corporation, Park Avenue.
Motion approved, Jim.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer,
Second, Sierra.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra and Councilman Susi. Comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R80 is approved 7-0.
20R81, authorizing the Finance Director to enter into a contract with Northeast Revaluation Group.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilman Kithis, seconded by Councilman Susie. Comments? Solicitor D. Simone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want the council to be aware that we are under a legal obligation to do reval of properties every so often, and we're due to do that this time. So I just want the council to be aware that we do have a legal obligation to do a reval of the properties within the city before they vote on this. So we are obligated to do a reval. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
With full understanding of the solicitor's explanation of the legal requirements, I would like to offer an amendment in the best interests of the city. I would like to amend this resolution to read that the City Council of the City of Woonsocket hereby authorizes the Finance Director to enter into a contract with Vision Government Solutions for statistical revaluation services as required by Rhode Island General Law, Section 45-5-11.6, in an amount not to exceed $175,000 for the 12/31/20 revaluation.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments on the amendment? Councilman Brean.
Oh, no, I was seconding as well, Council President. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
I alluded to it earlier that the amount of concern and argumentation and disagreement over the various revaluations, and even when you consider, add to that the late Albert Brian's objections and some of the complaints from property owners, and the fact that we've spent so much money trying to defend Northeast Revaluation's work, that far exceeds the difference of $47,000 in this price. I think the avoided cost of legal battles is worthy of simply going back to Vision Government Solutions to do this revaluation in the hopes that we can avoid the kind of litigation we're currently involved in.
And what would you say the litigation cost us, Councilman Ward, from your analysis?
Well, the litigation for fiscal year 20 cost us $114,000. That's $79,000 over the budget. And of course, many of those cases will continue into fiscal 21 before they're settled. Frankly, I don't know what the settlements will be, but it's been my experience that the settlements generally will end up being either the baby divided, so to speak, or the city losing. It is rare that cities win these fights. And so we have more legal expenses associated with various cases ahead of us. And I think we should seek to find a way to avoid that. And I believe with our prior firm, we were not encountering these kinds of fights in court over values. So that's why I
So
made
it's significantly more than the 47,000.
Mr. President?
It'll be in our interest financially to go with what I consider to be the second low bidder that is in the best interests of the city. And I believe the way the bids are phrased, it is our choice to select the lowest bid in the best interest. And I think this is the case with Vision. Thank you.
Thank you.
President?
Solicitor D. Simone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I understand Councilman Ward's amendment. I just think it would be more prudent, if that's the wish of the council, that we do another resolution so that we wouldn't run afoul of the open meetings, because this is more than just a minor amendment. We're changing the company and the amount. And I think that we should, list it. It's only a resolution. We could do it at a special meeting. So if that's the council's wish, then they should probably either table this or vote it down, and then at another meeting, it could be a special meeting because it's only a resolution. We would post it for 48 hours as normal, and then you could vote it then. That would be my advice to the council.
Council President.
Councilman Ward.
I had already drafted such a resolution, but when I knew that this was going to be on, I thought an amendment would be sufficient. However, if the solicitor believes it's best that we do that, I will resubmit the resolution I had drafted to the clerk so that it can be put onto a special meeting agenda. And I guess then the choice would be to not make any amendment here and to take a vote. And in my case, I would be voting in the negative. So I can
That
be
would
happy
be best,
to do
Councilman.
that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President?
So should Director DeSimone, Solicitor DeSimone. No, I just want to be sure if we, what is our best approach? Do we want to just have this, the amendment's already been made and seconded. So do we want,
I can withdraw the amendment.
You could withdraw the amendment, then you could just vote it down, vote this resolution down or table it. Either way, it does the same thing.
and with
And then
your,
at the next meeting, you just put the resolution that Councilman Ward talked about.
and the
so
warning
it's
that you
fully
gave
vetted.
us, the warning that you gave us won't be affected. I know you started out with a warning that we have, the state law says we have to do this. It's not going to be a problem if we don't pass it tonight.
No, I mean, I assume you're going to pass it, next week or the week after, right? I mean, I assume you're going to have a special meeting and pass a resolution, so we're
Council
not,
President? Oops, sorry.
Okay,
Council President?
yes. Director Chamberlain?
Yes, I just want to be sure that this is time sensitive, so if you can have a special meeting, that would be the best
I
approach.
won't make a guarantee. I won't make a guarantee of when we will do it. Our next meeting is September 14th. And so that's when this was tabled at the last meeting, I had thought a different resolution would be coming back because it was tabled because of concerns. So I won't guarantee a special meeting. It may happen, but I will tell you that our next meeting is September 14th.
Mr. President, if you will allow me over the next couple of days, I'll look into the urgency of the resolution and if we need to do it before September 14th, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Just let me, Director Chamberlain, are you all set? I guess, Councilman Susi.
Yeah, I just had a question, because I fully understand this whole thing, but is there something about, is there a reason why the administration and the city finance director do want to use the Northeast reval? Is there something that we should hear that if we have food,
Director Chamberlain, do you want to speak to that?
Well, it was the lowest bidder. They did obviously a revaluation, and I took the recommendation of the assessor at the time.
All right, so it's not, all right. I'm good.
You're good, Councilman?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Council President?
Councilman
It's Tim.
Tenoya.
Yeah, just to add to that, for Councilman Susi and others, the difference in price is $175,000 for Vision, $128,000 for Northeast. So there's a $47,000 gross difference. However, since we get reimbursed by the state at 80% on these things, it's really an incremental cost of just $9,400 for the city to go with Vision versus Northeast, if that's the route we go. So it's not as much as, it's not even the 47,000, it's only 9,400.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Then what's the will of the council? Want to go to roll call or do we want to table?
I'll make the motion to table. That'll achieve.
Motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Brian and Councilman Susi to table 20R81. Roll call, Madam Clerk, on a tabling.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis, Councilman Kithis,
Yes, sorry, I was muted.
thank you. Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susi,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R81 is tabled 7-0.
20R82, granted permission to use city property.
Motion to approve, Ward.
Motion made by Councilman
Second,
Ward,
Jim.
seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoia,
Yes.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes,
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susi,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and 20R82 is approved 7-0.
20R83 in support of House Bill H 8050 entitled authorizes the city of Woonsocket to require payment of a registration fee for businesses in the city, introduced by Representatives Casey and Phillips.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion for discussion.
Motion made by Councilman Susie. Do we have a second?
Second for the purpose of discussion.
Seconded by Councilman Kithis. Comments?
Council President,
Councilwoman Sierra.
I just want to weigh in here. I don't understand what the train of thought is with this. It literally is beating a corpse. And for that reason, I will definitely not be supporting this resolution. It's seeking funding from businesses that are dying and bleeding. It's seeking additional money from them, even if it's $1. No matter, I understand that the council would be able to set the fee, but in these times, and considering what these businesses have been through, to even take $1 from them is, I don't get it. I truly don't understand where the thought process is in this legislation. I will not be supporting this.
Mr. President?
Okay, any other comments? Councilman Susie.
I agree. I was confused by it, so I just didn't know if others knew more than I did as to what the genesis of this was. Maybe somebody in the administration knows, or.
Council President, can I address?
Director Chamberlain, please.
So what we find is tangible tax has a high rate of uncollected balances. We run like between 4 and 5% each year of uncollected tangible accounts, and we're not looking to charge an enormous fee, just a small fee, so we can track businesses better, and we can pursue the collection of these taxes. It doesn't do a business any favor either to have them accumulate a large balance in their tangible tax. Then they're accumulating interest. This will keep them up to date and they'd be saving money. Sometimes they just put the bill aside, at the bottom of their stack. This will, this could help them too. And it will help us with our collection of the tangible tax. So it's not looking to charge a big fee, a small fee so we can track the businesses.
Okay. Is that good, Councilman Susie?
Yeah, so I'm taking it that so it's just to fund the resources needed to do that? Is that what we're looking to
Right,
accomplish?
so the business would register with the city, so I'm not, just to throw a small fee, whatever it's set at, 5, 10, whatever the amount is, so we can track the businesses, and every year they have to be up to date on their taxes, not just tangible, but all their taxes in order to, operate their business.
So the registration, yeah, so the most important part of this is the registration aspect of it. It's not the monies per se, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's not the amount to collect more revenue, it's to
It could be $1
be
fee.
able to track the businesses and,
All right.
and any lost revenue from businesses or anybody that doesn't pay their taxes has to be absorbed by, everyone else in the city.
All set, Councilman Susie?
Yeah.
Council President.
Councilman Ward?
I can't support this kind of legislation, and I understand the need to identify potential taxpayers related to their tangible taxes, which, by the way, is not a voluntary, but a self-declaration of values. I believe it was about 3 years ago, the city spent $20,000 for a contractor, the tax assessor in the city of the town of North Providence, to assist our assessor in auditing these tangible filings. I expect with the outcome being that we identified underfilings and generated more revenue. Part of the job of the tax assessor's office is to get into the city to consider what businesses are out there, visit them, and look into some of their filings and audit them year after year. And I don't think it would serve us well to tell businesses that they can't come into the city to open a business here until they file an application or a registration and pay a fee to us to come through the door. And it may accomplish getting some information that will be helpful in getting tangible taxes, but you're taking something that is a responsibility of the assessor's office and throwing it over to the clerk's office. And heaven knows what we've gone through trying to staff up the clerk's office properly. So I don't think the clerk's office needs this burden placed on it at this time. And I cannot support this.
Thank you. Any other
Council President.
comments? Council Vice President Brian.
Thank you. I personally find, number one, I understand it's a revenue stream. And I know that once any state or municipality grabs a stream of revenue, they'll never let it go. And I find that the tangible tax to be a tax which is probably one of the most invasive taxes. And frankly, I know it's a matter of General Assembly and infinite wisdom, but the fact that we rely on tax for businesses by simply saying, you possess stuff to conduct your business and therefore you're going to pay us on that. I find that always to be problematic for me. But also I have a problem with the timing of this. I can't support this. The timing is terrible. I mean, maybe if we were living in an era of no COVID, we wouldn't be meeting like this. None of this was going on. The stock market continued to boom. Everything was as it was right before this virus hit. Maybe that would be the time and the place for this conversation. I don't believe it is now. I think that, the businesses that have remained, they're staying together by spit and bubble gum. And I think that it's just not the time to do this kind of thing. And even if the fee is $25, or whatever it is. I remember there was a time when the mayor and the city solicitor and myself were all in the General Assembly together, and I argued against a 3-cent tax on cell phones because I felt it wasn't about the 3-cent tax on the line, but that was the beginning. That's where it starts. Once you pass that revenue, that stream of revenue, then it's going to tick up. It will invariably move to 35 and then 50. And then it becomes a stream of revenue that any municipality or any government entity, once they get their hands on a stream of revenue, they'll never let it go. And it's not so much about the amount, it's about the principle of consistently nickel and diming businesses in every single way to get some type of centralized system. I am always been someone who says, get out of the way. Government needs to get out of the way of business. I am a free market individual. I believe that's how things should work. I'm not going to approve something that creates more control over businesses and creates more. So I think the timing is bad. I don't like it in concept, and I will not be supportive of this tonight. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Vice President. And I'd just like to add on to that. Is there anyone that doesn't think that the way things are going, that we will not see tolls for every vehicle in the state of Rhode Island in short time? I think you're right, Councilman, that once a revenue stream begins, remember, the state sales tax only went up from 6 to 7% to cover the bailout of the credit unions. We're going to go back to 6% as soon as the credit unions are bailed out.
Did Krista support this?
I'm sorry?
I don't know.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
No.
Councilman Canoia,
No.
Councilman Kithis,
No.
Councilwoman Sierra,
No.
Councilman Susie,
No.
Councilman Ward,
Hell no.
President Gendron.
No, and 20R83 fails 7-0. Councilman Ward,
Council President,
Council Vice President Brian.
may I ask that Madam Clerk send a result of that vote to the Chair and the Clerk of the House Municipal Government Committee?
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Councilman Ward,
Council President, in light of the lowering temperatures as we move towards autumn, let us adjourn this meeting this evening.
motion made by Councilman Ward, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Brian,
Yes.
Councilman Canoyer,
Yep.
Councilman Kithis,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Yes.
Councilman Susie,
Yes.
Councilman Ward,
Yes.
President Gendron.
Yes, and we are adjourned at 8:40. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
You too. Thank you, everybody.